You hear that ticking? The old man smiled faintly. That's not your register, son. That's the sound of your ignorance counting down to a lesson you'll never forget. The young cashier blinked, confused, then sneered. Sir, those are just costume trinkets, right? He scoffed, motioning lazily toward the small glinting row of medals neatly pinned inside Arthur Bellamy's weathered blazer. Arthur, 74, leaned harder on his cane, his knuckles whitening. The wave of irritation was familiar, but it landed differently today, heavier. They're not for decoration, kid, he said, his voice as dry as sandpaper. They're 30 years of blood and bone. Earned, not bought. The cashier rolled his eyes, tone flat. Sure, they always say that. Coffee's full price. 10 minutes later, Arthur sat outside, the burn of overpriced caffeine paling next to the sting in his chest. Then, suddenly, the store's background music snapped off mid-jingle. Silence, followed by a sharp, commanding voice over the intercom. Attention, shoppers and staff. This is Admiral Lorne Mercer. If you still believe courage deserves respect not mockery comment, honor still stands below. Retired Master Sergeant Arthur Bellamy moved with the heavy care of a man stitched together by wars and decades. The parachute malfunction over Kandahar had left his left knee permanently twisted, hence the custom hickory cane that never left his side. His face was a map of wind-scoured years, creased, sunburned, but lit by quietly defiant eyes that hadn't dimmed. He lived simply, his pension and VA disability barely stretching to cover his modest apartment and daily routine VA clinic visits, worn-out history books, and the occasional indulgence in good coffee and a fresh paper. Today, that small pleasure had drawn him to the glossy new Harlow and Finch Market, a swanky, steel and glass establishment downtown with shelves full of vegan jerky and water bottles that cost more than his monthly socks. Harlow and Finch pushed their brand hard artisan everything, cold brew on tap, and posters boasting senior and veteran discounts in flowing script. Arthur, in his neatly pressed but threadbare blazer, practical trousers, and orthopedic loafers, wasn't exactly their target demographic. But he'd heard their coffee was good, and on this day, the anniversary of a long, violent deployment, he'd felt compelled to wear his miniature ribbon set. The silver Valor, bronze crest, and crimson heart shimmered discreetly inside his jacket, visible only when he chose to let them be. Approaching the counter, he ordered a large black roast. As the cashier rang it up, Arthur opened his jacket a hair. "I believe you have a veteran's discount," he said with deliberate politeness, offering his VA ID and the quiet presence of his medals. The cashier, a young man named Trevor, early 20s, all gelled hair and fake empathy, glanced disinterestedly at the card. His eyes flicked toward the ribbons and lit up with an arrogant smirk. "Veteran's discount, huh?" Trevor said, voice dipped in sarcasm. "What are those? Prizes from a cereal box?" Arthur's jaw set. His hand hovered near the ribbons like a shield. "They're my service medals, young man," he said calmly. "Right," Trevor laughed, trading glances with another employee, restocking avocado hummus nearby. "Costume jewelry for a retired cosplay convention. Look, Grandpa, we get plenty trying to milk a free latte. Real veterans show real ID, not some shiny tin bits." "This is a valid ved," Arthur said, his tone level but laced with quiet steel. "And those tin bits, as you call them, represent operations, deployments, and sacrifices I lived through." Trevor waved dismissively. Yeah. Everyone's got a story. Unless you've got a scannable, active-duty military card, it's full price. You want coffee or war flashbacks?" Arthur didn't flinch. "This ID is current for those purposes, and those pins include a silver Valor. Maybe you should learn what that means before you decide it's funny." Trevor shrugged dramatically. "Silver Valor, bronze bravery, golden magic wand, doesn't matter. My register doesn't scan fairy tales." "That'll be $4.75 unless you'd rather try that soldier spiel on someone with fewer brain cells." From behind the juice display, the other employee let out a snort of laughter. It rang out, sharp and unkind, as if mocking something that should never be mocked but had been, openly and without consequence. The insult hit Arthur deeper than any battlefield wound ever had, not in flesh, but in the quiet, sacred space of memory. Around him, he felt the eyes of nearby customers, some curious, others visibly uncomfortable, none stepping in. Behind the glass office window, the store manager, Miss Langford, looked up briefly from her screen, squinted, then turned back to her emails without so much as a blink. Just a cranky old man having a spat at the register, not her concern. Arthur's grip on his cane tightened until his knuckles paled. A silent fire spread in his chest. Still, decades of iron discipline held his voice steady. "There's no call for disrespect, son. I'll pay for the coffee." He reached for his battered wallet and methodically counted out the exact change. His movements were stiff, deliberate. He no longer wanted the discount, not after this. Not after being ridiculed like a liar in uniform. He just wanted to leave this glittery farce of a store, to breathe air that didn't reek of contempt masked with lavender diffuser mist. Trevor took the money with a theatrical little flourish, printed the receipt, and slapped it down with a smug grin. "Enjoy your day, Master Sergeant," he said, the title oozing sarcasm like oil off bad meat. Arthur took the cup and the receipt without a word. No one else spoke. No one intervened. He moved slowly, carefully, out of the polished store into the open-air patio near the entrance. The wind bit at his jacket. He lowered himself onto a cold metal bench, the weight of his body heavy, but nothing compared to the heaviness in his chest. The coffee sat untouched in his hand, steam trailing off like the last of his patience. He couldn't drink it. The bitterness on his tongue wasn't from the roast. The ache he felt wasn't in his bones, not this time. It was a deeper kind of wound. The kind that came from being erased, forgotten, reduced to a joke by a kid who had never worn boots heavier than his Instagram clout. Arthur reached into his jacket, his fingers brushing over the hard ridges of his medals, a familiar, grounding texture. Each one had its own weight. A firefight survived, a friend lost, a mission completed against impossible odds, and now dismissed as trinkets by a boy who thought bravery came with a barista badge. He closed his eyes and exhaled long, slow, ragged. He'd never been a man who caused scenes. But this felt different. It wasn't just about his pride. It was about the meaning of the cloth he'd worn, the oath he'd kept, the blood that had been spilled under flags and sun. It was about all of them. Arthur pulled out his old cell phone, not smart, not fancy, just solid and dependable. He scrolled through the contact list, pausing on a name he hadn't dialed in years. A number given to him directly by Lieutenant General Lorne Mercer, his last divisional commander, a man who once told him, "Only use this if the ground really shifts beneath you. Anything, anytime." Arthur had never needed it, until now. He paused for 1 second, thumb hovering. Then he pressed dial. The phone rang twice. Then came the voice, gravel thick, sharp as ever despite the years. "Mercer." "General Mercer, sir. This is Arthur Bellamy, from your old unit Echo Company, 3rd Infantry." A breath, then a sudden shift in tone. "Bellamy. Hellfire. It's good to hear your voice. How the hell are you, Master Sergeant? Been too long." "I'm holding up, General. Mostly." Arthur didn't waste time. He told the story in tight, clean beats: the visit to Harlow and Finch, the attempt to use his VA card for the posted veteran discount, the clerk's mockery, the manager's silence. Not a complaint, just facts. A report, like the old days. One more line in a battle log. "Harlow and Finch, Market Street," Mercer repeated, and Arthur could hear the temperature drop in his voice, that unmistakable tone of combat mode. Cold, focused, tactical. The same tone Arthur remembered from mission briefings before dawn insertions. "And the clerk? Called your medals costume jewelry?" "Yes, sir. Among other things." "And the manager?" "Didn't intervene, didn't care." "I see," Mercer said. 2 words, but they carried enough force to split concrete. "Are you still there?" "Yes, sir. Sitting on a bench just outside the front doors." "Don't move." Mercer's voice sharpened like a drawn blade. "I'm 2 blocks away in a meeting with the city council. Looks like my schedule just opened up. Arthur blinked. Sir? I'll be there in 10 minutes. Maybe less. The line went dead. Arthur sat in stunned silence, the phone still in his hand. He hadn't expected that. He'd assumed Mercer might call corporate, or write a letter with a general's seal. Something bureaucratic. But no, Lorne Mercer had never done things halfway, especially not when one of his soldiers was being dishonored in the open. Arthur remained seated, eyes fixed on the automatic glass doors. Inside, customers buzzed in and out, shopping bags swinging, unaware that something was about to shift, not in retail, in respect. And still, inside Harlow and Finch, life buzzed on blissfully, unaware of the quiet storm brewing just outside. The expensive, untouched coffee next to Arthur hadn't cooled as quickly as his faith in the place. 8 minutes passed, then 9. Precisely at the 10-minute mark, the curated indie folk music echoing through the polished aisles of the market cut off mid-note. A sharp silence spread like a ripple through glass. Then a click. A voice emerged from the overhead speakers. Not the soft, overly friendly tone of the store's usual announcements, but one that struck like a bolt from a parade ground, crisp, iron-edged, and carved from decades of authority. Attention Harlow and Finch customers and team members. Your immediate attention, please. Shoppers froze mid-brows. Clerks halted with their arms half extended toward organic trail mix. Near the back, Trevor, still mid-boast to his coworker about teaching some cranky old fraud, a lesson snapped his jaw shut. He turned toward the ceiling, blanching. This is Lieutenant General Lorne Mercer, United States Army, retired, the voice said, calm but thunderous beneath the surface. I am currently within this establishment. It has come to my direct attention that a decorated combat veteran, Master Sergeant Arthur Bellamy, a man who served his country with honor for over 30 years and who wears the citations to prove it, including the Silver Valor awarded for gallantry under fire, was moments ago subjected to appalling disrespect at your front counter. A hushed murmur spread like wildfire through the store. Customers turned in place, whispering. Employees exchanged wide-eyed glances. Some instinctively stepped away from their stations, trying to locate the voice's source. Trevor's throat dried. His smile vanished. This employee, Mercer continued, his tone like steel drawn from a sheath, not only refused Sergeant Bellamy the advertised veteran's discount, but went as far as to mock his service medals, dismissing them as mere costume pieces. And worse, Mercer added after a beat that hung heavy, this shameful act was ignored by a manager present on duty. Upstairs, Miss Langford, the store manager, burst from her office, her face pale and stricken as she scanned the ceiling speakers like they were broadcasting divine judgment. Down by the juice station, Trevor's bravado dissolved into a sheen of sweat, his feet rooted as if caught in a minefield. This degree of ignorance and mockery toward a veteran, especially one of Master Sergeant Bellamy's caliber, is not simply unprofessional. It is a stain, an insult not only to him, but to every man and woman who has ever taken the oath and worn the uniform. And it is an offense that this establishment will rectify immediately. Then, silence. The speakers cut off with a faint click, but the echo of Mercer's words clung to every polished shelf and high-end display. The store, moments ago, a hive of motion, had stilled. Everyone waited. No one dared speak. From the upstairs office, General Mercer emerged. He'd commandeered the PA system from a confused assistant manager, and now descended the stairs with swift precision. Even in a civilian suit, he carried himself like a force of nature, broad-shouldered, silver-haired spine straight as a bayonet. He walked directly to the central floor, flanked by gawking shoppers and employees. Miss Langford stood near the front counter, twisting her hands. Trevor stood beside her, ashen and still. Around them, a respectful distance had formed a circle of witnesses, watching history unpack itself in aisle 4. Miss Langford, General Mercer said coolly, stopping before her. I presume? Yes, General, she stammered. I didn't know what had. And you? Mercer said, his eyes shifting to Trevor with a gaze that could peel paint. You're the one who believes campaign medals are costume jewelry? Trevor gave a weak, miserable nod, his lips twitching but unable to form an excuse. "General, I am deeply sorry," Miss Langford began, her voice shaking. This is all a massive misunderstanding." "This is not a misunderstanding, madam," Mercer interrupted. "Not cruelly, but with the kind of unshakable firmness honed in combat zones and command centers alike. This is a failure in training, a failure in leadership, and most importantly, a failure in respect." He scanned the room. "Now, where is Master Sergeant Bellamy?" Just then, a floor employee sent scrambling by the assistant manager re-entered the store, gently guiding Arthur back in. The old soldier's brow furrowed as he stepped inside, coffee in one hand, cane in the other, eyes sweeping the odd gathering before settling on the unmistakable presence of the man waiting for him. "Arthur," General Mercer said, his voice softening in an instant, the storm breaking like sunlight through cloud. "It's good to see you." "Former Master Sergeant," Mercer said, clasping Arthur's shoulder with quiet firmness. "Good to see you still standing tall, though I'm disgusted by the circumstances." He gestured for Arthur to join him at the front, then turned his gaze hard and unwavering back to the store's manager and the cowering clerk. "First," he said, his tone slicing through the hush, "you will both offer Master Sergeant Bellamy a direct, unambiguous, and sincere apology for your disgraceful behavior and total failure in judgment." Miss Langford and Trevor nearly tripped over their own tongues. Their apologies came out stammering, nervous, dripping with fear and genuine regret. Arthur listened in silence, then gave them a slow, tired nod, not out of forgiveness, but out of endurance. "Second," Mercer continued, "this store, Harlow and Finch, will immediately issue a sizable donation to the Veterans Housing Alliance in Master Sergeant Bellamy's name, as a measure of reparation. It won't erase the insult, but it will show intent. My foundation will follow up to confirm the amount is worthy of the apology." Miss Langford nodded so quickly her hair bounced. "Yes, General. Whatever amount you deem appropriate." "Third," Mercer said, his voice rising just enough to reach every ear in the building. "Effective immediately, this store will shut down for the rest of the day. All staff, every one of you, will report to an emergency mandatory training session. The topic, respect. Specifically, how to interact with military veterans, understand the meaning behind their symbols, and recognize service when you see it. My team will provide the instructors at no cost." Gasps moved like a wind through the shoppers. A full shutdown? On a weekday? Unheard of. "But General," Langford tried weakly, "that's today's revenue." "Consider it tuition," Mercer said flatly. "The cost of an overdue education. An education in dignity which, it appears, this place is in desperate need of." And so the store did close. Staff were ushered into the back by Mercer's team for what would be a deeply uncomfortable and, by all accounts, transformative session led by a no-nonsense retired gunnery sergeant who accepted no excuses and pulled no punches. Shoppers were kindly escorted to finish their purchases and exit, many offering supportive words to Arthur or saluting Mercer on their way out. General Mercer didn't stop there. He personally accompanied Arthur down the street to a quiet little cafe not Harlow and Finch and insisted on treating him to the finest coffee they had and a proper meal. Over steaming cups and clinking plates, the two men talked for over an hour. They shared stories, both recent and old. And for the first time in years, Arthur found himself talking honestly about his struggles. Mercer didn't interrupt. He simply listened. Before they parted ways, Mercer made sure Arthur had more than a hot lunch. He handed him a secure contact card, direct access to a veteran support network tied to his foundation. "Housing, benefits, medical navigation will make sure you've got everything you need," he said firmly. "No soldier of mine gets left behind, Arthur. Not then, not now, not ever." The next morning, Harlow and Finch reopened with a new fixture just inside the glass doors, a sleek sign framed in brushed steel. It read, "We proudly offer a 15% discount to all veterans and active duty military personnel every day. Thank you for your service." Trevor, the clerk, still had his job, but witnesses noted his demeanor had shifted dramatically. He now greeted veterans with respect, and no longer scoffed at medals. Miss Langford, for her part, began implementing broader respect protocols across all her store locations. And the story of the general, the master sergeant, and the shutdown took on a life of its own. It spread through the city like wildfire. A tale repeated in barber shops, schools, and city council meetings. A quiet legend that reminded everyone that honor doesn't demand attention, but when disrespected, it will answer. Arthur Bellamy didn't just get a cup of coffee that day. He found something rarer: the echo of camaraderie, the long shadow of loyalty, and the enduring power of dignity reclaimed. Because sometimes all it takes is one phone call and one commander who never forgot what it means to lead, to remind the world that those medals, they're not costume jewelry. They're a silent debt the world can never repay, only acknowledge and honor.